Howdy folks, and welcome to another Taste of Gameplay video, this time for the American Tier 10 Tech Tree Battleship, the USS Vermont. As always, these videos are designed to give you a sample of the gameplay of the ship, not to be an exhaustive analysis. I recommend the Wargaming Wiki or other content creators. So, are you sick of acoustic homing torpedoes and memorizing magic numbers and HE spamming and setting fires and launching planes and all this other garbage? Do you just want to sail a big old battleship and make big guns go boom and sink things? Well, then boy howdy do I have the ship for you. And it's a Tech Tree ship, so you don't even have to do anything all that special to get it. The Vermont is kind of legendary. Some people call it the Brick. That's not entirely fair. It's actually a bit more of a subtle ship than it seems at first. It's actually a little bit more challenging to play than it might seem. I do think there's room for skill here in this ship. By the way, this is the bane of Battleship's existence. This is the problem with pushing in this game. I'm immediately getting lit on fire by a Smolensk. The detection of the Vermont is very bad. It's 14 kilometers. This is not a ship that's going to sneak up on people. It is hard not to compare this to the Grosse Kurfürst, which I played recently, and which just feels like a ship out of time. I don't really enjoy playing the Grosse Kurfürst anymore at Tier 10, but I do not feel that way about the Vermont. I actually enjoy playing the Vermont, and it's not immediately clear what the difference is, but I can tell you that the feeling you get from the Vermont is much more subtle. It feels much more maneuverable. It is more maneuverable. It has a turning radius of 850 meters instead of 1050 for the Grosse Kurfürst, which is really terrible. They actually buffed the maneuverability on the Vermont. The time to accelerate, I know, has been buffed. The superstructure is not as big on the Vermont. At least it doesn't seem as big. The armor is actually technically better on the Grosse Kurfürst. There's less regions of 32, which means technically there's less that can be overmatched by the super big guns on things like the Shikishima. But in practice, that doesn't really matter all that much. The Vermont still has an absolute boatload, excuse the pun, of hit points. And it's just a really tanky ship, and it feels much better to drive. It's slow, but it's maneuverable, and it has ways to defend itself. I'm not going to use them in this game because luckily we don't have any aircraft carriers, but it has both defensive AA and a fighter. I took the fighter, by the way, instead of the spotting aircraft because this ship's range on its guns is 28.4, and I just feel like you rarely need more than that, unless you really are just obsessed with playing all the way in the back line, which is not really how you should play the Vermont. This is not by any means a brawling ship, to be clear, which is one of the differences, I think, between this and the Grosse Kurfürst. There's a temptation with the GK to play it in tight because you really feel like you want to make use of those secondaries. But with the Vermont, that's just not an issue. So the main thing about the Vermont is the guns. And the main downside of the guns is that they have a 40-second reload. And you would think I would kind of hate that because I've mentioned several times that's my first casualty. By the way, spoiler alert, I don't even feel like I'm going to play all that terribly well in this game, but I'm still going to get 100,000 damage and sink 4 ships. And that's just kind of how the Vermont is. Like, you point guns at things every 40 seconds and you launch shells and then things blow up. And if that's not fun, then maybe this isn't the game for you. Now, I mean, there's lots of downsides to the Vermont. I've mentioned one of them. 40-second reload is pretty epic. I think one of the things that I tend to do when I play the Vermont, because I feel like it's a good strategy, it makes the ship more flexible, but also because it's a little more fun, is I don't fire all the turrets at once. I will tend to fire like the front turrets in one ship and the back turrets at a different ship. And I mean, I don't always do that. Sometimes there's times when you've just got a perfect target lined up and you can fire a full salvo. that also tends to mitigate the problem with the turret traverse. I don't think the turret traverse, it doesn't feel as bad as in the GK, but it's still pretty freaking slow. But yeah, the Vermont, it's fun. I honestly think it's really fun. It's one of the more fun Tech Tree battleships. I don't play it a super lot, but you know, again, World of Warships, once you strip away all the fluff and frou-frou, is a game about guns shooting ships. And I've mentioned this in a few other videos. It's almost never a bad thing to have really good guns. And the guns on the Vermont are really good guns. The shell velocity is excellent. The pen is kind of legendary. The alpha is really high, so you do a ton of damage even if you only get penetrations. I think that was like a 20k salvo. This Aki, by the way, is just classic, right? Like any hybrids, they think they're just going to sit behind an island and launch planes. Yeah. Hybrids are very powerful in the game, but I mean, again, I never want to, you know, comment. The goal is not to comment or shame anybody for their play, but like, yeah, don't play hybrids that way. Don't just sit behind an island. That's not the way you want to do that. I'm not saying that's what that guy was doing necessarily. He may have had a better tactical plan, but it didn't work out. Anyway, yeah, so I mean, that was one penetration and I did 5,000 damage. I mean, there are ships that would be thrilled to have that in a full salvo. Of course, those ships don't have 40-second reloads, but still. I don't actually think I'm even going to get any citadels in this game, and I'm still going to do 100,000 damage. Yeah, I mean, what is there to say about the Vermont? You know, the shells, they make that really cool sound. They hit so hard. They're pretty easy to use because, like I said, the shell velocity is good. I'm consistently under-leading anyway because it's really hard. I've mentioned this many times. I'll say it again. You know, I only play these ships once and I move on to the next ship. So sometimes it's hard to calibrate for the aiming. But yeah, this game, by the way, this is really nothing to do with the Vermont, but this is a classic problem of giving up a flank. The red team basically just gave up our flank, and you just really can't do that. And this is why, because it's just so easy for people to get cross shots. So here's a good taste of the maneuverability of the Vermont, right? I'm just gonna, I mean, of course, most battleships can do this, but given how big this thing is, how many hit points it has, and how big and heavy the guns are, it actually is very maneuverable. And it's kind of short and squat. The GK just feels like it's so easy to hit. It's like a giant blinking sign that says, please spam me with HE. And the Vermont doesn't feel quite the same. Again, certainly not small or stealthy, but I don't know. It doesn't feel the same when you're actually driving her. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can get rushed down in a Vermont. You can get spammed with HE. You can have planes dropped on your face, and it can be very unpleasant. There's 2 kills. Also has good ASW, of course. I mean, most American battleships do. Am I going to get the kill on this guy too? I think I am, actually. That's a little gross. Yoink to that kill. But I'll never apologize for launching planes against a submarine. That's what they're for. Yeah, the dispersion is pretty good, especially considering the range. Yep, here's another torpedo beat. Just gonna sail on in between these guys. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, it feels really good to just old school style launch really high caliber AP that pens well and has good shell velocity and just has high alpha and just does huge damage to people. Like that's just never not going to be fun. And if you think you're gonna find that fun, then try the Vermont. The key is to understand positioning. I mean, I guess that's the key to World of Warships always. Aim, of course, aim is important. You know, got to practice your aim. If you can't hit anything, then that's no good. But next to that, positioning, like being close enough to have impact on the battle, but not so close that you just take a ton of damage. Because tanks, tanks. Ships are not as tanky as they used to be, just across the board. And, you know, a ship like the Vermont is no exception. If you try to push into 4 or 5 ships and a submarine and an aircraft carrier, I mean, you're just going to have a bad time. But if you can stay at, you know, 12 to 15K, I'd say. I mean, I'm not an expert in the Vermont, and these videos, as I always say, are not guides on how to play these ships. But I think, yeah, the Vermont, oh, there's kill number 4. The Vermont is just, it's actually really good at exactly that, too. You know, I talk a lot about the importance of removing low health targets off the map, and the Vermont is just really good at that. I mean, because you really only need like 1 shell to hit. You don't even need a citadel. You just need a full pen. And like I said, you're going to do 5,000 damage. That was just some poor aim right there. Skill issue for sure. But yeah, 4 kills, 103,000 damage. Pretty good battle impact. And like I said, this isn't even a great game in the Vermont. This is a very mediocre game. I think I'm going to get like 1,600 experience. I don't know what the PR would be on this game, but I mean, this is just like an average game in the Vermont, which is amazing. So yeah, do I recommend you pick up the Vermont? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, she's super fun. Yeah, she's the brick that keeps on giving. Those guns, they just never stop being fun. Yeah, I'm in like the bottom half of the table and I sunk 4 ships. Anyway, yeah, fun to play a good ship. I enjoyed this one. That's it, and I will see you guys in the next video.